Welcome to SchneiderB FM. This is the podcast to help you use the internet to market your school in order to achieve your enrollment goals. I'm your host, Brendan Schneider. Welcome to episode 20, where the guest, or should I say guests today, are actually listeners of this podcast. I asked in my Facebook group for questions that people wanted me to answer, and on this show, I'm going to answer all of those questions. But before we get into the actual answers, let's hear from our sponsor. Do you want to know the secret to creating the best private school website? The truth is, website redesigns don't have to be long, arduous, can't wait until it's over projects. The secret to avoiding the mess? Planning. Blackbaud K-12 has some interesting ideas on improving the school website redesign process. Whether your school is looking to redesign this year or in 3 years, their new ebook, How to Design the Best Private School Website, will help you plan ahead. Please download your free copy today at my special link, SchneiderB.com/Blackbaud. So let's jump in with our first question. It's from JR, who asks, if you had a small ad budget, $1,000, and you were just starting out with no ad history to learn from, where would you spend it and why? Thanks for the question, JR. I'm assuming you mean digital ads, so that's what I'm going to go with. And before you spend any money on ads, I want to make sure that you have the structure in place to properly benefit from the ads. So let me explain what I mean by structure. First, you're going to need an offer that you will advertise. So whether that's an inquiry magnet or an open house registration, some sort of call to action. The next thing you're going to need is that ad promoting that offer. The next thing you're going to need is a landing page that you'll drive that ad to or the person to. So you're going to drop them on a landing page. And then extra is, let's say that you're advertising an inquiry magnet. You want some sort of email service provider which can send automated emails and then nurture those people who download that inquiry magnet. Once you have that structure in place, so let me assume that you have that structure. If you don't have that structure in place, I would actually spend the money on getting that structure in place if you need to spend the money. But once you then have that in place, I would spend the money on Facebook, and I would use Facebook ads to promote your offer, whether, again, that's the inquiry magnet or open house registration. And I would use a lookalike audience of your current parents, and I would layer that with geography. So another term people use is geofenced for your school. So let me talk about that a little bit. Facebook, if you're not aware, gives you the ability to create custom audiences. And what that means is that you can take your current parent emails. So take all the emails from your current parents. If you have a smaller school, you might have to take the last few years. I think ideally they'd like, I always tell people, 750 to 1,000 emails. And the reason you want that many is that what you'll do is you'll upload those to Facebook, and then Facebook tries to match those emails to a Facebook user. And it's probably a 60 to 70% match rate with an email address to a Facebook account. So you want to have enough because you're going to lose some of those. Hope that makes sense. From that custom audience, which is uploading those emails, you're going to create a lookalike audience. So what Facebook's going to do is through their algorithm and the information that they have, they're going to identify characteristics that your current parents have, and then they're going to find other people on Facebook who share those characteristics, meaning they would probably be a good fit for your school. So you're going to create that lookalike audience. And then we're at a day school. I'm at a day school. So, my catchment area is, let's say, up to an hour away. So I'm going to only want to serve that ad to people that are an hour away from my school. We're located in Pittsburgh, so I wouldn't want to serve it to somebody in Colorado because they're not going to come to my school because we're a day school. Now, if you're a boarding school, you might want to think about what other way you could carve that up geographically. Maybe there are cities that you want to target, but that's how I would spend that money. The other thing I think it's really important is that you need to create multiple versions of the ad. You've got to start to do some A/B testing because from my experience with Facebook, you just don't know what's going to resonate with the people you're trying to attract. So think about different images. That's where I always start, is I create an ad with different images. So you want to keep the variables the same. And then once you see an image that works, try different ad copy, basically describing what the offer is, describing, features, benefits, things like that, depending on the ad. And then, try different calls to action. So, JR, thanks again for the question, and I hope that helps. Next question is from Jenny, and she asks, is it better for schools to send prospective families who find them through online ads to specific landing pages outside of your regular site, for example, made with lead pages, or is it better to have prospective families end up on a landing page within the school website so that they can browse around if they would like? Jenny, my answer categorically is send it to a landing page. And the reason you want to do that is that you're spending money. So I'm assuming you're going to spend money on these ads. If you spend money, you want them to perform your call to action. So they're going to click through the ad. They're going to go to the landing page. Let me define how I think of a landing page. It's branded visually and otherwise to look similar to your school or your school website. And it's devoid of navigation. So again, this is why you don't want to be on your school. And it has one call to action. The other big thing on a landing page is that you want the offer and the text on the landing page to mirror the text or the intent of the ad. Simple example is if you're going to advertise your arts program, you don't want to drop them to a landing page that's about your athletics program. There's a disconnect there, and people aren't going to appreciate that, and most likely they won't convert. But back to your question, you want it to be a landing page without navigation, because the thought is if you go to a page where they can, I'm doing air quotes here, leak off the page and go to some other part of your site, you lose the ability to convert them. You lose the ability to get that email address. And in my mind, if you're doing any ads, that's really what you want to get is that email address. So I hope that makes sense. Deliana, and I hope I said that correctly. I'm sorry if I didn't. What social media analytics tools do you use, and what specific data do you use to improve your work? Huge question there, big question. Thank you for asking that. I have a couple different tools, and I'll explain why. We use Hubspot at my school, and there's a number of little reports and things that I look at in there. But the biggest thing I pay attention to is interactions and engagements. I want to see that people are interacting with our content, that content is resonating with people. If you don't have HubSpot, it's fine, but you can find that same kind of information in the tool that you're using, whether that's Buffer or Hootsuite or any number of social media tools. I also think it's important to then go to Google Analytics. And if you go to, on the left-hand side, it's acquisitions and then social, you can see what people are looking at on your website that come from social. So I think it's important to know, so for the first thing, what are they engaging with? What do they like? So that you can do more of that, or maybe less of that because they're doing something you don't want them to do. Then I think you have to look at Google Analytics to find out what people are looking at. You can also, and I recommend that you go to, let's just use Facebook, use the social media tools own kind of analytics, or in this case, Facebook's Insights tool, because you can see what content resonates with the audience, see what people are engaging with, and again, do more of what's working and do less of what is not. I also think it's really important within Google Analytics, I think it's really important to set up goals. I think there's a post on my site, and I'll try to link to it, or I'll link to some sort of content about setting up goals in Google Analytics. But that's really important to find out if people are doing what you want them to do. And I would argue that would be filling out the inquiry form or downloading something. Again, the big point here is you want them to convert. You want their email address. And then ultimately for me, all of this social media analytics and use of social media, it all ties back into the numbers that matter, which are the inquiries, the apps, and the visits, or whatever you track within your admission office. If those numbers aren't changing for you for the better, then whatever you're doing, you need to change so that those do change. So I hope that makes sense. Ashley asks, do you track event registrations by source? If so, how do you do this with Blackbaud / Google Analytics? I'd love to be able to track the full process from ad click to event registration conversion in Google Analytics. Is this possible? Outside of online ads, what other tools do you use to promote your open house prospective parent events? I'm not sure if I fully understand the question. I'm sorry. But I go back to the question before. What I really think you need to do here is set up Google Analytics goals. And how I would do it is I would create your event reg form. So we're talking about event registration. Send traffic to a thank you page. So let's unpack this a little bit. So let's say that you're going to do some sort of advertisement and you're going to send people to the event page where they register, some sort of form. After they complete that form, you want to make sure that they go to a thank you page, a separate page. And the reason that's important is that you're going to take that link of that separate page, that thank you page, and you can set that up as a goal in Google Analytics. And then once you have that data, you should be able to learn more about the people who registered for your event, i.e. the people that completed your goal. So then you'll know, again, more of what's working, more of how people are interacting with your site. You also asked a question. I want to ask if you utilize HubSpot for your development efforts. If so, can you elaborate on this? A huge question, Ashley, big question. But let me unpack my thinking about this a little bit. So first, the way I view HubSpot, it's really only a tool to help us, you, me, whomever, to properly and more efficiently implement the inbound marketing methodology. And so with that background, I've been thinking about how to use inbound marketing for school fundraising. And quite frankly, I haven't had a lot of success. I think inbound marketing might work better with a nonprofit that doesn't have a built-in donor base like a school. So an example that I just came up with is like a local animal shelter. If you're trying to raise money for your nonprofit local animal shelter, inbound marketing methodology, again, the ability to get found might work better with that kind of nonprofit versus a school that already has, again, a donor base built in. Alumni, parents of alumni, current parents, on and on. So people that already have a connection. I mean, it's hard to use, the way at least I think about it is it's hard to attract people who aren't connected to your school to give money to your school. So that's kind of where I've fallen on this. Specifically, though, where we're trying it, I'm experimenting, is we're using, and again, this is it, my focusing on the tool or the methodology, but we do use HubSpot's blogging tool to push content that we feel would be attractive for development purposes and recruitment purposes, specifically sharing stories about our alumni that not only make the case for our education to prospective families, but also help alumni to connect to their institution, whether they knew that person or not. So long-winded answer. Hope that makes sense. William asks, hi, Brendan. While we're clearly trending towards fewer words on our website pages, that seems to be directly in conflict with SEO benefits of strong and relevant copy. Do you agree this is an issue? And if so, how do you suggest balancing these two forces? Thanks. It's a great question, William. And just to explain a little bit, so search engines like Google depend on words on pages for search engine optimization. They depend on those words, and although they're getting smarter and although there are things like artificial intelligence, the stuff that I've read is that they still need those pages to figure out what the heck is on your page. Now, to address the tension in your question, we're writing less, writing more, better for SEO, not better for SEO. Here's what I would say. I would say write for the human. Specifically, as we think about inbound marketing, think about the persona, the person that you're trying to attract. Write for that person and then let the chips fall where they may. If the content isn't attractive to humans, it really doesn't matter what Google thinks. And if we play this out, if your content is found by the persona you're trying to attract and it doesn't resonate with that persona, it's a huge problem. So that would be my problem. That would be my concern, is write for humans and let it go from there. Now, maybe we go down the other path, but maybe that's another podcast, which is the fact that people potentially, again, I'd have to read more about this, but, reading less online. I've seen people reading more online. I've seen people write things that epic blog posts, 2,000-word blog posts are doing really well. So maybe that's another kind of fork of your question, but I still go back to write for humans and then, let the chips fall where they may. So Melissa asks, any advice on how to best evaluate if an outside vendor for market research and data analysis for prospective families is worth it? Melissa, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I have a great answer here except to check references. With that said, though, I can offer this advice, or just at least my thinking, is I would make sure that your request for proposal or your RFP is very specific about what goals you're trying to accomplish. What do you want to do? And then ask to speak to a reference, which is hopefully another school, that has had the same goals or some sort of alignment, so that what we're getting at here is that you want to do A, B, and C, and let's say that the reference they give you has done B and C, or asks also for B and C, so maybe not all three, but two of them, and the firm has accomplished those goals for the other reference, and then you can have a little bit of comfort knowing that their work will align with what you want to accomplish. I hope that helps. I wish I had a better answer for you. Teresa asks, they're tackling a new website. What are some specific cost estimates range for a new school website and a time frame that's reasonable to get it from start to finish? Teresa, I'm going to give you a really vanilla answer, and I'm going to let myself off the hook and say it depends. In terms of costs, it really depends on your vendor. Most vendors offer different price points, although how much you want to do in-house versus outsource is a big issue. How custom versus kind of canned is a big issue. Also, that in-house versus outsource issue plays into time frame. What expertise do you have in-house? And then how is their individual, or more importantly, your collective team bandwidth? How much bandwidth is there to tackle this new project? Because schools are notorious for this. We never take things off of plates. We only add. So if I think of a MarComm team and potentially an admission office working together to get your new website, I'm not sure that anything you're doing is going to be removed. This is just going to be another project on top of it, albeit a big project. So that will hugely affect your timing just in terms of bandwidth. I can give you some advice, though, just from personal experience and conversations I've had with other people, is that whatever you set for deadlines and timelines, assume you'll be late. You're going to go long. It takes a lot of time. The other thing that's in there is don't worry about being perfect. Your website will never be perfect. The beauty of the web is that it is dynamic. You can make changes on the fly. So don't be afraid to get it 80% of the way there, or pick your percentage number and launch it and then adjust. Another big factor is, are you going to do new content, or are you going to just kind of reskin the site? So visually it changes, but the content's the same. So in any case, don't be afraid to launch with, let's say your website's going to finish with 100 pages. Don't be afraid to launch with 50 of those, or 60 or 70, and then add on there. And don't wait for perfect, because it'll never be perfect. Flo asks, what advice do you have regarding creative side of starting an inbound marketing program from scratch? We will have a new website provider later this year that has an inbound module. So I anticipate that will be a huge help in how I administer the work, but not so much on the creative side. What pieces other than your amazing 27 questions guide, thanks Flo, have been effective for you, and what types of materials should I be on the lookout this year to build my arsenal of creative works? This is a really good question, Flo, thank you, and one that I really haven't thought about too much. Let me take a crack at it. Knowing you've probably read this book, but I recommend, if you haven't to do it or other people, and I'll have a link in the show notes, is the Inbound Marketing book by the founders of Hubspot, Brian Halligan and Dharmesh Shah. It's on its second version. It's called Inbound Marketing, and it has a long subtitle. Really read that book to understand the whole process. I think there's some creativity stuff in there, but the piece I would focus on, in terms of being tactical, is really focus in on the persona. Think about who you're trying to attract, and then think about what would be attractive to that persona. So said another way, what kind of content could you create that the persona would, it's so attractive to them, they would pay money for it, but you're going to give it to them for free. And actually not free, you're going to give it to them in exchange for their email address. So that's what I would think about. A real tactical thing, and I recommend everybody do this, is that let's say that you identify one persona. Think about people in your own school community, currently or recent grads or recent parents of alumni, who kind of match up, fit that persona. Take them out to coffee, have lunch with them, have them into the office, and have a conversation with them. Talk to them about how they found your school. Talk to them about the difficulties they had researching your school or other schools. Start to ask those probing questions and, take good notes from that, obviously, but then see if that conversation starts your creative juices flowing about content that you can create. The other final piece of advice I'll give you is that don't do this in a vacuum. Don't do this by yourself. All of the stuff that we've created, we have our 27 questions guide, we have our college research worksheet, and we have our pre-K checklist. Those were all created in a group. It's really great to throw ideas off of one another. And I'm fortunate. We have a group that is very honest with each other. We've been around together for a while now. And, we're not afraid to throw out an idea and then someone will say, no, I don't think that works, or that's terrible. But it's all done in a caring way so that, but they might say, well, that's terrible, but how about this? And then you can spitball from there and come up with good ideas. So hopefully that'll help. So the next question is from David, who asks, based on the 7 Ps of services marketing, do you believe school marketers should get involved in product, or is that the domain of the head of school? Wow, David, that's such a loaded and fun, big question. For me, it really comes down to what's your role at school, and then really where it goes to me, or for me, is to your school's mission. As a marketer, this is where I think as much agency as we have is that if your school's delivering on its mission, then I think you're okay. But if the school is not delivering on the mission, which I would argue means they're not fulfilling their product, then I think it's okay to offer suggestions or make that comment or let people know about that. Whether somebody or whether the MarCom office gets involved in changing the product, boy, that's a big, hairy question and probably goes more towards the board, which, again, is the head's part of, but really comes back to the core of the school or the backbone of the school. And gosh, maybe that's a whole nother podcast. There's so many different ways I can go, but to directly answer the question, it's okay to comment. And maybe that's most often those comments come through strategic planning. But I think that's really probably for someone else at school to keep their eye on the ball and keep that going. Sandy asks, how do other schools use Pinterest for marketing? Sandy, I'm a huge lover of Pinterest. I don't spend a lot of time on it personally, partly because it just is a time suck. You can get lost in there. But we do use it for marketing. We've used it for years. Our account at Swickley Academy, I'll link it up in the show notes. For us, the jump into Pinterest is that, at least when it started, and it's still this way, is that it's a social platform dominated by women, and it's a lot of great content and groups around moms. And through our own research, we believe that moms are the decision makers for their children's school. So that's why we spend time on Pinterest. And it's really about community. But then we've also shared, again, our content, going back to an earlier question about, the inquiry magnets or that creative piece that would attract our personas. And we've had a number of conversions. And when I mean a conversion, I mean somebody comes to one of our web assets, whether that's a blog or a website, clicks on a call to action and gives us their email address in exchange for something, whether that's the inquiry form, whether that's an event registration, whether that's an inquiry magnet like our 27 questions guide. But that's really how we're using Pinterest as just another channel to reach new people. We have experimented with advertising on Pinterest. We're not doing it now, partly because I go back to an earlier question about bandwidth. We just don't have the bandwidth to do that. But I think that there is potential, and there are many different possibilities for advertising on Pinterest. I hope that helps answer your question. If you have a follow-up question, please ask it in the comments, and I'll try to help you out there. Andrew asks, recommendations for a private and collaborative media management platform to assist our MarCom department. Our MarComms department need to centralize, organize, and share school memories with our community. Vidagami, SmugMug, Waldo photos. Andrew, this is super specific, and I don't have a great answer here. I mean, we've gone through this and had questions about this. The first thing that comes to my mind is, do you really, and I don't mean this in a bad way or an accusatory way, but is there really an issue, or is it something that you're making an issue? And again, I'm not trying to point fingers or be bad in any way, but I know from our own experience, we've contemplated doing this, and I don't want to get into vendors or specific solutions, but these tools are really, really cool, and they can help and do amazing things. But I think they're specific to solving certain problems. So I encourage you to make sure that there is a problem, and maybe said another way, is this a need or is this a want? And then for me, and what we've done is that, is something like this a priority, or is there something else that you could be doing in the MarCom office that would be a higher priority? That's kind of where we have fallen. So I don't have any really a better answer than that, and I apologize. Maybe if somebody listening to this wants to add to the comments of the show notes and help Andrew some more, that would be great. So sorry, Andrew, it's best I can do. JR asks, what percentage of a school's budget should be devoted to marketing? My kind of quick answer, JR, is as much as the school can afford. But I think what goes along with this is, or as I think about this, is where are you spending the money? How are you spending the money? What are the results of that spend? Unfortunately, I don't have a percentage to share. I can't say that you should be spending 1% of your budget on marketing. It really does depend. And then the other big question is things like, are you talking about just ad spend? Are you talking about money for creative? Are you talking about salaries? The people that you have in MarCom, the percent of FTEs in that. So it's hard for me to come up with a percentage. I'll give you my assumption, though. My guess is most schools don't spend enough. If you think of a business, the MarCom people and the admission people are your sales force, and they need the tools to go do their jobs and recruit. That, if you would have said that 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, people would say it's blasphemy, to think about it that way, think of a school that way and having a sales force. But I think we've gotten past that. I think 2008-9 helped with the stock market crash, but my hunch is not enough. Schools aren't spending enough. So Stephen asks, a fun question. If a school could afford to employ one only specialist professional in MarComms admission, what would you choose and why? So here are the examples. Graphic designer, photographer, videographer, copywriter, etc. My quick answer to this would be, what role would be the best at rounding out my team? Or who could I hire, or what could I hire to complement what I already have? And that's probably where I would go with that. If I'm looking at your examples here, Stephen, graphic designer, photographer, videographer, copywriter. Yeah, I don't know. Again, if I go back to my team, I could think of the skills that we have and the skills that we don't have, and then do that. But in terms of hiring somebody, just to be really honest, I probably wouldn't want to hire a full FTE. I'd probably want to either outsource that, hire a virtual assistant with that skill, and then use the rest of that potential money and spend it on, the ad spend, which is JR's other question. How much, like I said, you can never have enough money to spend on marketing. So I would think of it that way. Yeah, it's a fun question, Stephen. I don't know if I've answered it for you, but that's kind of where I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking about. So that will do it for all the questions for this listener question episode. If you have questions about what I've said, or you have follow-up questions, please ask them in the comments. And if you like this type of episode, this listener question type of episode, please let me know in the comments, or hit me up on Twitter, or send me an email, and just let me know you like that. And if I hear from enough people, we'll do this again. I've enjoyed answering questions. It's really made me think, so I appreciate everybody that asked a question. And if you haven't done so already, make sure that you join my Facebook group. We'll have a link in the show notes. so that next time I call for questions, you can ask a question and hopefully I'll answer yours. So thanks for listening, and until next time. Thank you for listening. But before you go, can I ask a favor? I would love for you to leave an honest review of this show on iTunes. Reviews are the way that more people can find the show and we can get the word out and we can help more people market their school. I've made it easy for you, so if you go to SchneiderB.com/iTunes, it'll take you right where you need to leave the review. So thanks very much, and until next episode.